As a child, Rahel Mann's freedom was taken from her. Her family was Jewish. Her mother and father were deported to a concentration camp. Rahel survived, hidden by a neighbor in the cellar of this building, in the Schöneberg district of Berlin. "70 years ago, when the war ended, she was free again. Rahel was 7 years old.
Ich habe bemerkt, dass dieser Raum Angst für mich barg, wenn
Here in this room, I was afraid when I heard the sirens, the bombs, the pounding of the soldiers' footsteps in their boots, which sounded different from the footsteps of the people who lived here. I was afraid of that, and most of the time I was here in the dark. I couldn't turn on the light or move or call out or make any noise. That was hard when people who lived in the building came down here. They weren't supposed to notice me. I stayed very quiet the entire time. And about 5.5 months later, the Russians came, and they liberated me.
She was hidden behind this wall made of wood.
This used to be the coal cellar. The light is on. Maybe Andreas did that. There was a wardrobe here, and behind it I had a mattress, 2 blankets, a pillow, my book, my notebook. The bucket was over there for me to relieve myself, and that was it. I was here in the cellar and had to wait until the war was over. So I was brave, and that's what I did. I didn't have the words, images, or knowledge to reflect on what was happening around me.
She still remembers when the Soviet soldiers came, and she was freed.
One
of them came to the door. It wasn't locked. He came in and he walked back here. He reached out to me, but I hesitated. I had no idea who or what he was. And then he did something very smart. Even back then, I was impressed by it. And now I think, what a clever man. He took a photo out of his coat, the inside pocket, and he showed it to me. And there were a lot of children on it, maybe a few adults, I can't remember, but a slew of children. I understood that he was trying to tell me that I didn't need to be afraid, that he had children too. So I let him take me. He took me out of my hiding place and we walked out. They gave me a bath and warm clothing and something to drink, but nothing to eat at first. I remember it as though it was yesterday.
But now it's good to get out of the cellar again and go back outside, into the light and the present day.
Over here, all the buildings were destroyed. But there's still a lot of old buildings there, and they've been beautifully renovated.
Less than a week after Berlin capitulated on May 8th, the German Wehrmacht surrendered.
Around May 7th and 8th, we didn't really know what was going on in Berlin, what kind of agreements they were signing. We just kept cleaning up, getting water, talking to each other. All those events on May 8th, we weren't aware of any of that. One day, I saw two little girls on their roller skates, right here. And there was some shooting going on, and I saw shots coming down from our roof over there. And in the rain of bullets, suddenly, I saw first one girl and then the other girl fall over. They'd both been shot dead, right there on their skates.
And how did that affect her?
I'd seen so much misery, but that was different. I just couldn't understand that. They were two little girls who'd had absolutely nothing to do with the war in any direct way, who'd been hidden away until it was all over. And when it was all over, when it wasn't even an act of war, they were shot by those idiots. I thought about it often, and it upset me.
Eventually, Rahel Mann started keeping a diary. She filled up one diary after the next with her memories. The people who'd been injured in the war, the brutal deportations, the unsung heroes who protected her, her months in the cellar. "70 years after the end of the war, Berlin is once again remembering those months and years.
It all looks terrible. When you look at the cars, the tanks, quite apart from all the buildings and the people, everything looks all dusty and destroyed.
Rahel Mann's father had been shot and killed. Her mother still bore the scars of her years in the concentration camp. But for Rahel, it was a time of freedom. She played in the rubble with other children, went hunting for hidden treasures. The adults were all busy, too busy to pay much attention.
When I was about 17 and a half, in puberty, I'd just gotten my period. I went through a bad spell. I kept asking myself how it could be that so many others had died, but I'd survived. I'd escaped it all. Everyone had protected me. But why? It seemed like so many other people were more deserving, that they should have survived instead of me. That's where my thoughts were. And one day, when I was walking along Barbarossa Street, I felt this urge to step out into the street. Nothing I'd planned, just an urge to throw myself in front of a car. The driver must have sensed that somehow. He braked hard and stopped, and he got out and smacked me in the face and said, "Don't ever do that again." And then he got back into his car and vanished. It was like a wake-up call. I'd had a moment where I just wanted to get away from everything, to run away. I didn't want to cope, to deal with the past or the future. But after that, I decided to try to find meaning in my life, to do meaningful things. So that's what I did.
Rahel's mother had contracted tuberculosis in the camps and was in and out of hospital. Rahel herself spent many afternoons with an aunt. A local pastor also helped. In these photos, she was still in high school.
That was actually a good situation for me. Not to be with my mother, no father. Instead, I grew up with mental and spiritual strength, even though I couldn't express it that way at the time. But it was the right thing. I always say, everything that we encounter or experience, that's the way it has to be. People who yammer and complain all the time, they're not doing themselves any good. Even if you've had terrible experiences, they're part of you. They had to happen. They demand something of you, and they've given you something. For me, life is always as it should be, the totality of it, the good and the bad sides.
Rahel Mann grew up with an inner strength. In the end, she became a psychotherapist and made helping others her career.
It's a bit chilly. I need to put on a coat.
Rahel Mann is often asked to speak about her experiences. She's happy to do that. But not because she thinks she has something to teach. She wants to make people think. In early May, she'll be on stage at a theater in Berlin. Today, she's rehearsing with the director. The theater piece brings two generations together: high school students and people who lived through and remember the Second World War.
Well, the most difficult time, that was the time in the cellar. I was mostly alone.
Rahel Mann doesn't believe that she has anything to teach others, but her childhood did teach her something.
There in the cellar, I'd say I learned how to feel free inside, even behind walls. That's in my control and not dependent on my circumstances.
The experience of persecution and war, the months of darkness and isolation, did shape her life. But Rahel Mann has held fast to her inner freedom and strength of will. And with that, she took the bad and turned it into good.
Und fürchte dich auch nicht vor den anderen.